Where did you start? How did your calling come? Wait a minute, back up. How did you get there?
Welcome to Suncrest United Methodist Church in Morgantown, West Virginia with Pastor Larry Buckland. Each week, Larry will ramble on about Sunday's sermon, impactful people and ministries, and no doubt, sports. This is The Rev Rambles On.
I want to welcome everyone to the Rev Rambles On, and we're so glad that we have these initial listeners with us today. Mark, I'm Larry Buckland, pastor at Suncrest United Methodist Church, and I have alongside with me Mark Markle. Mark, thank you for getting on this adventure with me.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, I want to tell you a little bit about it, Mark, and our listeners about how this began and where I want to go and where we're headed with it. Is that okay with you?
Sounds good.
All right. Probably a little bit before COVID, I was pastor at Life United Methodist Church in Fairmont, West Virginia. And for those listeners, we are here in Morgantown, West Virginia, Suncrest United Methodist Church now, where I became the pastor July 1st, 2023. Here we are in 2024. I'm jumping ahead.
It's only seemed like a year and a half, right?
Yeah, it has. And so, but what I want to tell you is I had this idea when I was the pastor at Life, and I have a broadcasting background for my college experience, and I always wanted to be the voice of the WVU Mountaineers. It wasn't the calling, the ministry at first that got a hold of me. So I love sports, and we will probably here and there, as I do in my sermons, I will mention sports from time to time. Does that surprise you, Mark?
No,
okay.
Not at all.
All right, just wanted to make sure.
I would be worried if there wasn't a mention of sports.
I wanted to make sure you knew what you were getting into here. The Rev Rambles On, and we'll talk about worship, we'll talk about the sermon, we'll talk about our community, and we'll talk about sports too.
Sounds good.
As you can tell already, I like to ramble. So I'm going to ramble back a little bit and go back to how this began. I had a worship leader at Life United Methodist Church named Jeremy Batten. And Jeremy and I talked about this, and Dusty Merrill at Life United Methodist Church also is good at graphics and marketing and video, camera, all those kind of things. And so he made a branding logo for the Rev Rambles On. So I want to thank Dusty Merrill for doing that. And then I want to thank Jeremy Batten because he was sitting in your seat, Mark, and he was asking me questions every week after the sermon. And so thanks again to Jeremy Batten, Dusty Merrill, and the support that I had at Life United Methodist Church. So Mark,
okay,
go ahead.
Where did you start? How did your calling come?
Well, a little bit about that. I grew up in a religious home. I grew up in McDowell County, southern West Virginia. Went to Kimball Elementary, Welch Junior High, and Mountain View High School. And so that was I was a terror from the beginning. That was the nickname of the elementary school, the Kimball Terrors.
Oh,
so
it's not a personal comment.
I know. I was a Kimball Terror. Played elementary basketball there, and I'm not a great basketball player, but I love sports. But anyhow, as went through that journey, I grew up in the Pentecostal Holiness Church, and my mom and dad eventually became pastors of a small country church. Mom and dad were both ordained in the Pentecostal Holiness Church, and my mom worked also with the school system as a parent educator resource for people with special needs with the Board of Education. And my dad had worked in the coal mines as a lab technician, and then when that coal mine closed down, also falling back on some things he had done before. He was a meat manager in a grocery store. Didn't have a whole lot growing up, but with my dad at a grocery store, we always had some food coming home for us to have. But anyway, growing up in the church, I had a lot of people ask me about, are you going to be a pastor too?
Really? Oh, because of your dad?
My dad, and then I guess I was heavily involved in things. I love competition. And so even if it's not sports, when I was in youth group, they used to have these competition of Bible drills where they'd call out a scripture.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I grew up Baptist.
Okay.
And
right.
were very similar kind of challenges during Sunday school and youth fellowship.
Yeah, so the first that pull up that scripture and read it, you'd move up a pew. And the person that got to the front pew the fastest won. And then we'd have these competitions with points, memorizing scripture and all these different things. And I was really competitive and liked doing that. I won't bore you with it, but like I still today can tell you the books of the Bible in order. I can say it so fast you'll think I'm speaking in tongues.
Whoa.
You know.
I can't say I can do that. Did at one time, but
Yeah,
no longer. So how did you go from that to?
Well, then I went to school because I wanted to be the voice of the Mountaineers. Went to college, and then during that time, though, I got involved in campus ministry, and so I had the opportunity to go and see different places of worship. Traveled some, and would tell about some of the things what I was doing with campus ministry, and then had some other pastors ask me again if I thought about going into ministry, and of course I kept saying I want to be the voice of the Mountaineers, and Jack Fleming, who I loved, was the voice of the West Virginia Mountaineers for many, many years. I can still also, I loved the beginning of a game, like 30 minutes before when they would come on the air and he would say, "And the hills resound with West Virginia football." And he would tell a story that was painted that you could feel like you could see it, even though it was on the radio.
So this is second choice?
At the time it was. So as I fast forward a little bit, I finally went and said, as I was working as a student associate pastor at Westmoreland United Methodist Church in Huntington, West Virginia.
Wait a minute, back up. How did you get there?
People will not believe this, but I had some schooling at Marshall and WVU.
Okay.
Yeah, so then I had some connections in Huntington that I had this opportunity to be the youth director. And I was too young to be the youth director. I want to tell you that first. I was like 24. And I had 16 to 18-year-olds, 15 to 18-year-olds, something like that. But I had this one 17-year-old that was going on 30.
Oh.
Yeah, and he asked really deep questions that I wasn't prepared for. And so after that, the senior pastor that was at Westmoreland United Methodist Church is the late Reverend Dr. Michael Ognebeen. And he was a mentor to me, a father figure to me, and he pushed me in a direction toward ministry and even probably sped me up through the process quicker than I should have gone. So I went to licensing school of local pastor in 1999. So in the year 2000, I took my first local appointment in Ravenswood, West Virginia, North Jackson Charge, 5 churches: Silverton, Drift Run, Wilding, Beech Grove, and Lockhart United Methodist churches. And they were different kind of churches, and I was there for 3 years. But unfortunately, in 2001, my mentor, the late Reverend Dr. Michael Ognebeen, had an aneurysm and he died at 46 years old.
Oh.
And so that was a big part of my life. And for the second year of ministry there, I was serving those 5 churches, and I probably wasn't being the best pastor because I was in a lot of grief and a lot of questions in my life of saying, did God really call me to this? Or was this Michael's idea? And so I had a lot of time to think about it. Well, then September 1st, 2002 would have been 1 year to the day that he died. And I was breaking bread at the 9 a.m. service, the first day of Holy Communion. And as I broke the bread, I just began to cry and weep and couldn't really figure out why. But it was this moment that I felt that I can't explain to you. But it was like that God was speaking to me in that moment. And I heard God saying that, "Larry, I called you. It wasn't just Michael."
I think it happens a lot that way. I think you don't know why it happens, but when it happens, and you need to go forward. I mean, I've had that experience too many times on particularly mission opportunities. You know, you end up, why am I here? And it's a revelation in a way, small maybe than yours, but it's
not smaller.
The call comes and you just go.
Yeah. So no one else knew why I was crying either. And so, but no one knew. But then it hit me a little bit later that, oh my gosh, it was 1 year to the day that he had passed away. And it was a moment that I talk about, that it's a paraphrase quote from John Wesley when he says, "Preach faith until you have it, and then preach it some more." So I was going through the motions each and every week at those 5 churches preaching, and I probably wasn't being the best pastor for folks. But in that moment, then I was able to hear my call again, and I went then to the superintendent at the time, the late Reverend Helen Davis Bell, and said to her, "I'm ready to really go forward with this call. I'm ready to go to seminary." And so I then, in doing that, I needed to move. So I moved to Morgantown and became the pastor at Sabra United Methodist Church and Highland Park United Methodist Church in Morgantown. while commuting to Pittsburgh Theological Seminary. So did that for 3 years. And then after those 3 years, I graduated and didn't want to leave. But as graduating seminary, I had the opportunity to be appointed to St. Paul United Methodist Church in Fairmont in 2006. And then had some time there in church growing and doing great things. And then I reached out to the pastor at First Faith United Methodist Church, was Reverend Oslam Barkett, who had been here before. And I said, I know that Faith is thinking about at some point relocating. And so I also knew Oslam was probably nearing retirement. And I was thinking in some ways selfishly about St. Paul United Methodist Church, believing they'd probably grown as much as they could. And so reached out to start having merger conversations. And we merged in 2012. And then and by 2018, we relocated into the Technology Park in Fairmont and was Life United Methodist Church. And then fast forward now to a year ago, this month in February, on February 5th, 2023, I announced at Life United Methodist Church that under the bishop's direction, I was being appointed to Suncrest United Methodist Church effective July 1st, 2023. So there we go, Mark.
And here you are.
That's a long ramble already.
What do you see as the top priorities for your ministry?
I love connecting with people. I like to hear other people's stories of faith, or not even why they may not have faith, of what's the reasoning that someone can't come to believe in a higher power. I love having those kinds of conversations with people, and also especially with people that have been hurt by the church too. And but also just being involved in the community, and then your community presence of serving. You get to know so many people, and you get to realize that there are a lot of people doing God's work. It may not be a church. A lot of people thought I was teasing, but when I was in Fairmont, there's an organization called the Disability Action Center, and I would go out there every other Monday to do worship and share a message. And I would tell them, the clients there and the people that worked there, that the Disability Action Center was the best church in Fairmont.
Really?
Because every day they were doing work that empowered people, and for them to know their best potential and to know that they were loved and that they had possibilities that they wouldn't have dreamed of on their own.
Another question.
Yeah.
Your sermons contain, there's solemn in their intent, but they contain a lot of humor. I mean, not just chuckle humor. There's some belly laughs in your humor. Do you plan those out, or does it just come to you naturally?
I won't say they're always planned out. I can say sometimes that they just hit me, and I don't have a full manuscript in front of me. There was one week that, Groundhog Day was just right after, and that was planned. I made mention that, Puxatawney Phil and French Creek Freddy did not see their shadow, and I let everybody know I did see mine. And so unfortunately for all of you, it's 6 more weeks of long sermons. That was planned.
Okay. I appreciate that, but I do appreciate the humor in it. It kind of makes a counterpoint to the solemnity of the message.
Well, I need laughter in my life, Mark, and so that's probably a part of why that is. I look for things to be able to laugh at, because in our world today, there's a lot that it's not easily to laugh at.
Often you're the subject.
Got to be able to laugh at yourself, at least for me. Because I always wanted to be in a way that is hopefully allowing people to know how human I am, and that sometimes pastors are thought of as holier than thou, and I'm not. I'm a normal guy that likes to have fun, messes up a lot, and keeps trying, and needs a lot of forgiveness.
Anything I haven't asked that I should have?
I think this has been pretty fun. I've had a good time.
I have had a good time too. I appreciate you being willing to talk to us, and I look forward to our next opportunity to talk about whatever.
I do hope people will tune back in for the Rev Rambles on. And if you'd like to be a part of supporting our podcast, we'd love to have conversations about that as well.
And come on and by and visit us on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. All are welcome here. All belong here. Yeah. Well, have a great week, Mark.
You too.